Hey everybody, welcome to Music City Live. This is Ryan. Welcome to the podcast. I'm here with Ryan McMullen, the district sales manager from Taylor Guitars, guitar player and road warrior. Dude, thank you so much for driving up here to hang out
Ryan,
with
thanks
me,
for having me, man. This is a really fun experience. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, dude. Last time you were here, we went out to, was it dinner or lunch?
I think we had dinner, yeah.
Dinner. It was a good time. And dude, where are you from?
I am from San Diego, California.
And you drove all the way here?
Drove all the way here.
You are a road warrior.
I am a road warrior, yeah. It's a thing that my wife and I like to do, and we have a place in Michigan, and so it's become a summer tradition that we pack up the truck and the dogs and borrow some kids and get on the road here. So
nice. So are you coming up? So you're coming up to go to the cottage as well, or no?
Yeah. So my wife is there right now. We left last Wednesday. And it took us about 4 days to get across country.
Wow.
Got into town, middle of Michigan, Saturday. And then I'm doing my work thing now in the GTA and coming to see you too. So yeah,
right on, man. Yeah, dude. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I know I asked you to come on, and I appreciate you doing it.
Cool opportunity. Absolutely. Happy to support.
Yeah, man. So early days for you getting into music and stuff, what does that look like?
When I was a little kid, a lady took care of me during the day. My mom was a teacher, and her son was, I don't know, probably junior high school at that age. I was very little. And he would play Kiss in Boston. You're talking late 70s, early 80s. And I just loved hearing music. There's pictures of me as a 4-year-old walking around with a tennis racket as a guitar. Mm-hmm. And I just always wanted to play, and started playing guitar. I think I was about 12 when they finally realized that I actually was interested in playing. And
12's a good age.
It was a good age, yeah.
Yeah.
And then it was one of those things. I just always enjoyed playing guitar. I didn't necessarily drive to play in a band or anything like that. Just wanted to have it around, and it wasn't actually until after college that I started playing in a band and doing it. We're actually in a formal scenario.
What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was that wooden tennis racket. No, it's funny. My first guy, I had a nylon string. My parents made me play a nylon string. There was this really cool pointy electric guitar at the guitar store. It was an off-brand, I think.
Sure.
It wasn't anything special. But they made me play a nylon string. It was an Aria Pro 2.
Okay.
Was my first electric guitar, like the name
nice
that I had. Ironically, not long after that, I got myself a Taylor.
Okay.
Because of a family connection with Taylor guitars back in the 80s. And so indirectly, and not where I ended up, it had nothing to do with the fact that
you would never have known at that time.
Got this really cool 510 when I was about 13, 12, 13 years old.
That doesn't happen for all 13-year-olds.
Original owner of this old 30-plus-year-old guitar.
You still have it?
Oh, yeah. Totally.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pride and joy, It's one of those things. I've taken it around the world, and it's just always been by my side.
Don't take it on an airline.
No, actually, funny thing, United did break it once.
No, really?
Yeah,
that's hilarious. Yeah. But the song wasn't made for it.
The song, it was before the song. It was before the popular song. Yeah.
Nice. So you got to playing, and then you got into bands. Yes.
Yeah. What was funny is I was always like the band photographer. I liked playing guitar, but I didn't really want to hear people tell me how I could or couldn't play guitar. And so I was sort of the band photographer, worked as the, manager, if you will, and around the high school age. And so I was always hanging out with those guys. And it was just one of those things that after I graduated school, my buddy, one of my best friends, approached me about, hey, you want to start a cover band? And that was actually the same guys I still play with years later. So,
really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because there was a point where I didn't know if I could push further where I was going to go with guitar playing, and then you play in a band and it just sends you in this whole different. It just
so what kind of cover tunes were you playing? Like what kind of genres?
We were called the Reaganomics.
Okay.
And we played like B-side 80s tunes, and so we were like Planet Claire from B-52s or gosh, we did one night in Bangkok, and like some really random songs. We weren't playing like your A-list songs, and we'd play dumpy bars in my hometown of La Mesa, and just it was purely for fun,
And where did it go from there? So did you just stick with those guys the whole time, or did you jump in and out of any other bands?
I have played in other bands. I played in this cool band called the Motel Blackouts.
Okay.
That was a really good rock and roll thing. I
cool.
mostly have stayed with the same guys. We evolved into what is the band is now as far as playing original music, and the lead singer, my buddy Matt, started writing songs, and so we changed gears, moved away from this cover band format, and
Right.
started doing our own original stuff. And I'd sit in with some other people, but mostly, yeah, like I said, Motel Blackouts was a cool thing that I did with some friends of mine, and played with some other bands here and there. All of this is, Weekend Warrior kind of thing.
Yeah.
Manganista had a bit of a run, but nothing, got to play in LA, that kind of thing.
What were some of your inspirations early on in terms of music, in terms of playing, in terms of all that stuff? Like, what were some of the people that inspired you?
Lots of different places. So relative to where the band came from, we were big in Southern California. Oingo Boingo was a big deal, and 80s new wave was sort of my time frame. And so you had like the Cure and the Smiths, and I mean, shoot, They Might Be Giants, and music from that era. But Oingo Boingo was always like this unifying place where we came from. We all liked Frank Zappa, but that was a little bit more complicated than we could actually replicate.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately that came from that. I got into the guitar, like I said, early on, because it was like Kiss and Beatles, your basics, Beatles, Stones, Kiss, Boston, that kind of thing. And
I just went to see the last Kiss show ever.
Oh, did you?
At Madison Square Gardens.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was, of course, Gene televised it on pay-per-view.
Yeah, no, he's gonna make his money. I guess they sold their likenesses now, so they don't actually own it anymore.
At the end of the show, they were like, download this app to view something at the end of the show. Kiss will continue or something. I'm paraphrasing, but. And then at the end of the show, all of a sudden these things drop down and there's all these holograms. And then you had downloaded this thing and you scan these QR codes, and they talk about how, Kiss is going to live on as a hologram show. And so I don't really know even what that means yet.
I don't know what that means, but
yeah, there's
I'm sure there's a dollar difference.
There is more to that story, I'm sure. But never stop innovating, never stop selling the name. Good old.
I just played
Gene
Kiss
Simmons.
miniature golf a couple of weeks ago.
Did you really?
In Las Vegas, yeah.
Wow.
It was fun.
I haven't done. Where's this?
It's at the Rio. If you're in Las Vegas, it's at the Rio, and it's all indoors, all black light, and
really,
it's perfectly cheesy, and it's appropriately just Kiss, and it was a lot of fun to do. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, I've been following the band for years, but I was never a massive fan. But when I saw it was their last show, or their last tour, I was like, oh wow, yeah, you know what? I should go check this out.
I'm envious. I missed it. Yeah.
I was like, and normally I'd go to the Toronto show. And I didn't. I was like, for some reason, I was like, oh, what's the last show? If I'm going to see a Kiss show on the last tour, and it was MSG. And I was like, oh, man, you know what? And I hadn't been to see a show at MSG. And I'm like, you know what? That's
awesome.
This has got to happen.
What a great decision to make.
Yeah. And it turned out to be, double good because, for me, because the Toronto show got canceled.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so, anyway, we ended up going down to New York, me and a friend of mine, when we stayed a few days in town and walked like 40 kilometers because we were, doing all the touristy stuff.
Sure.
Some I'd done before, some I hadn't, but yeah. And it was fun. It was really super fun and had a good time. But yeah, the Kiss guys have inspired so many people. I had Bob Reed from Bob Noxious was also he's a singer for a band called Razor, and he's from here in town. And I had him on the pod, like on episode 3, and he's a massive Kiss fan, like massive. And I didn't even quite realize how big of a Kiss fan.
Really?
Yeah, until this was all kind of happening, and I told him, I'm going. He's freaking out, and he actually watched. Him and a bunch of his buddies watched it from home on pay-per-view. But yeah, so that was the Kiss thing has touched lots and lots of people, man. So that's not surprising.
You know, the way I'd always put it too, when I was looking back, I loved their album covers. But I was listening to Boston, you know, like as a 4-year-old, you know, like just a little kid. I loved Gene Simmons scared the hell out of me, you know, and
Dee Snider did that for me.
Oh, really? Okay, I get that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I get the twist.
And I met him like years and years later, like back, I think it was 2017. We sponsored an event called Rockin' Con. And he was like one of the, you know, guys that was hired to come in. And, you know, I got photos with him and stuff. And so, you know, it was kind of interesting, you know, whatever it was, you know, 30 some years later.
Yeah.
You know, there he is. And and it was no big deal, you know, obviously now. But at the time when I was, because it came out that We're Not Gonna Take It came out, you know, right around the time I was born. I think I don't know how old I was, but I wasn't very old. It's like 2 or 3 years old. And I was like, oh, these guys are scary.
They were scary. Yeah. No, and I remember that. That was some good stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the influences come from a lot of places. It's fun that way with music. I got to see. I've been realizing this later in life, and I've told the story before, but I got to see. And now my mind is going blank. Chuck Berry.
Oh wow, yeah.
When I was a kid, just happened to be at Magic Mountain, same place where that Spinal Tap show, you know, is, and rolled in as kind of a tired, grouchy kid, and I think that might have been one of the most influential moments of my life as far as wanting to play guitar, because he was just so good. It was I just watched this guy, white pants, duck walking around the stage, doing all this stuff with the guitar, and he was like, it was just so much fun. And I
wish, man.
Yeah, I go back to that time and think that probably, for all of the things, like the little things, that probably sealed it, that I needed to pick up an instrument and at least
Chuck
have
Berry.
it around. Yeah.
Man, that's something that I wish I could. You know, there's a lot of those I wishes. You know, one of the bad ones for me was Prince. Yeah, and my wife is still kicking.
Prince.
She's still kicking me that I never got to see Prince live, because we had the opportunity to go. He played here in town, and for whatever reason we didn't go. And she's like, you know, we should go. And I was like, I know, you know, we'll see him next time.
My wife and I call that the Tom Petty rule now.
Oh no, you didn't know. You did not go.
I didn't go.
No.
He was in San Diego, and it was this festival, and we're like, we'll catch him on the next time around. We probably should go see it, and fortunately passed away right after that. So now we're not missing those opportunities.
And I've told this, and I'll make it brief, because I've told it on the pod before, because there's another guy I just had on. He's a big Petty fan, but I hadn't seen him play live. I love his music. Hadn't seen him play live. Was going to the show in Nashville at the Bridgestone, and I got a call from my brother, and my brother knows their front of house guy. Long story short, I ended up at the Tom Petty sound check at the Bridgestone, hanging out, checking out the PA. They had this motorized EAW PA at the time that they were running, and anyway, you know, he's mixing for Kenny Chesney now. Ironically, I'm going to the Kenny show coming up in Detroit. So, you know, hopefully I'll see him there. But it was a really cool experience to go hang out and check that all out. And then we saw the show that night. And that was the last time he ever played Nashville. Because that was his 40th anniversary tour.
Okay, yeah.
And and it was, you know, days after the Hollywood Bowl, which was the last shows he did. He passed away. And I'll never forget goosebumps. I'll never forget where I was.
Man.
You know, when I got the news, we had just come back from cottage up north where there's no cell signal, and we stopped at a turnoff to gas up, and we had just grabbed like a coffee or something for the ride, because we still had like 6 hours to go to get home, and it was late at night, and we had Tom Petty radio on, and it came on the radio, and we were like, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we thought it was like, for half a second, we thought it was a kind of a joke, but then all of a sudden we realized it was real. And I sat there for half an hour. I sat there in the car for half an hour, just like, just destroyed. Just like, how is this possible?
Well, so that one, I mean, I don't know. It's always a surprise, and there's never a good time, but that one really just came out of nowhere. It seemed like,
yeah.
Like I said, it's become a rule now. It's just, if somebody's coming around, it's like, well, haven't seen him. guess we got to go see him.
You know what? And I would argue even comedy is the same, you know, because, you know, especially after the last 3 years of negativity in people's lives with the pandemic and everything, you know, we need some good laughter, man. Laughter is like, you know, a great medicine, equally to music.
You're absolutely right.
And so literally this Saturday, I'm so excited. I'm going to see, because it was a childhood thing. When me and my buddy Danny were growing up, he had an older brother and I didn't. And his older brother would watch stuff on TV on the cable box, and one of the comedians that would come up sometimes would be Andrew Dice Clay. And so we're going to see the Dice Man for the first time.
How cool. Right
in Michigan. We're going to drive over and we're going to go see him this Saturday.
Nice.
Because again, it's one of those things like you don't know. Like you just never know.
Those people that had, you have that place in your life, you know, they have like a time frame and, you know, that, or an influence, you know,
Sure.
that you need to go see that and go see live music, go see some comedy. Everything is so serious these days. It is good to, and
we got to support,
have some irreverence.
We got to support the people, man. I mean, the last pod we just did was with, I was telling you, touring front of house, a woman, amazing, you know, 30 years in the business, Deb Hutchison, shout out. She, you know, we were talking about, you know, supporting, you know, artists and stuff. And, you know, because with music and downloading, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
All you got's touring. And now everybody who's latched on to you gets a chunk of your touring, a chunk of your merch, a chunk of everything. So, you know, I think more so for the smaller to mid-level artists, you know, I think that community, creating community, which I was telling you earlier is a big part of why I'm doing the show.
Yeah.
Creating community around yourself as an artist and just getting, you know, other artists to support artists, getting the community to, you know, your core fans to support you. And, you know, they tell two friends and that whole thing, right? It's become that's become the way. You know, like, there's another comedian, Matt Rife, who's just exploded. And, you know, a lot of that, some of it, he's got really good people on socials, but he's out there, he's hammering, he's playing,
you gotta just be
he's
in people's
touring,
face, yeah.
You know, and he's good, and he's reaching people, and he's talented, and so, you know, and he's hammering, but people support him, you know, and there's some really cool right now, especially there's some cool platforms out there. You know, Rogan's show is great for this, and you know, Tony Hinchcliffe has his Kill Tony show. You know, there's all kinds of people, they're dragging people on there all the time, but for comedy, there's all kinds of things, and I'm just I'm looking for that with music. You know, I'm looking at, you know, how can we build some bridges and create some community again in the music industry.
And get people out. That's a really interesting idea because it's, I think with comedians, it's a one person show, right? Or you can get a few people that go out on the road together. When you have bands and you have to have venues to be able to handle it. And I know we've talked about this, those venues are not building, they're not more venues out there, you know, there's less and less. And so it is important, you know, if you do have a band or if you are playing in that environment, that you create that community. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, the venue thing is interesting that you bring that up. Like, what's the venue situation like where you are down in the States?
You know, well, in San Diego, you know, we're the little brother of Los Angeles. So you're up in Los Angeles, there's all kinds of different ways to play and bring people out. There's different parts of town. San Diego gets pretty small pretty quick. There's some really cool places to play. My band will have the opportunity maybe to open for some folks, but there are also some venues, smaller mid-size locations, the Belly Up, for instance, or the Casbah, that have a bit of a reputation and can get some smaller touring acts there. Then you start to get into the more of the larger, you know, theater before arena kind of sizes there. Clubs, though, it's with my band, I always look at it, we got to play like because we're not on tour, we can only play once every couple of months.
Yeah, of course. Because
ultimately it's a law of diminishing returns. If you're playing all the time as much as you'd want to, folks aren't going to keep coming out, and the pool that you're pulling from to get everybody out, especially as we're aging, I'm aging and our audience is aging, you know, 9 o'clock, it's pretty late for some folks, and so it's finding the right gigs and it is that community. It's finding bands that you can play with, and we were lucky enough to have a friend of ours who's running a small label even actually support us a little bit too. So that's
cool.
Kind of cool. Yeah.
How are the Troubadours and those types of places, like, how are those places doing?
Those kinds of places, and I don't spend a lot of time in Los Angeles, but those smaller clubs continue to push forward because there are bands that are out there, or there are those people that want to play and get in. I don't even know if the Troubadour is still around anymore, but I'm thinking like the Whiskey or the Viper Room or something like that. There are plenty of bands out there. The problem is, typically, I'm looking for maybe a burrito and a free beer or something like that to play a show. It's you can get the door at some venues, but it's then making it worthwhile for a band to fill the car up with gas and get to where you're going to go and get home and have that be worthwhile. But again, it's not my primary gig, so I'm not the best at that. We play some fun shows, and from time to time we get to have fun. Bring
people still coming out?
Yeah, people are still coming out.
That's cool.
You got to have some reason, and you got to push a little bit. Social media is helpful for that, and having a reason to get people out. Shoot, the neighborhood I live in, the last time we played, and we got to play in my neighborhood. There's a club there, and on this whole block down the street, it's a bunch of parents. It's like this one little enclave, and there's like almost like 20 kids, and they're all under 9. And so I was able to recruit all of the parents to get a hall pass and come see the show. And we had a great time. They got to get out and shake it up a little bit.
That's cool.
But yeah, it's my buddy, our lead singer, Matt Ray, his son Spencer is in a heavy metal band, and we got to play with them at an all ages show not so long ago. And
cool.
They're coming of age, and he just, it's always variety, we found an all ages venue, which is kind of fun, but it's actually a thrift store during the day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually kind of fun.
It was a really neat idea. And we're like, when we first saw it, we're like, you gotta be kidding me. Right. And then we get there and it's still like, oh, this is a little weird. The sound was great. Not a very big venue, but set out chairs, moved all the clothes and stuff away, and had a really good stage. And,
wow.
And again, all ages, so we could play with my friend's kid. And
sure.
Of course, they played last because they were thrash metal, and we're not.
Yeah, I think that kind of feeds back into the conversation me and you had before, like you said, about venues too, right? Like you have to be creative sometimes now with the venue thing, because the venue, it's getting harder and harder. I mean, I can speak to the Canadian side, especially here in town. There's a couple of real hardcore venue owners that are just, like you said, are just sort of moving forward with no matter what happens. They're just pushing forward, and they're figuring out a way to make it happen. But there's a lot that have gone away, and there's a place here in town called Call the Office, and I just saw the other day there's already and I said this to someone actually not that long ago. I'm like, I bet you they're going to tear it down for condos. And sure enough, I saw plans for it the other day. And it's literally one of our like 2 or 3 like Troubadour type places. Like it's a really iconic place. It was literally one of the first places that the Tragically Hip played.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Like it's really going to be a sad day when that goes. But
and that's the thing. It's an open space, right? And everybody's gobbling up open space. You need to have that. You need to have that space, and if you're going to have it, it's going to probably cost a pretty penny.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you can have a $5 entry fee and have just an open mic or something like that. It really takes somebody committed to doing it or interested in doing it.
Yeah, and my dad ran a bar for a few years, and I saw what that was like from behind the scenes, and that's another business, man. That's another type of business, and you're up late, and there's all kinds of elements there that are involved that you don't know about. So the people that do that, I really, hats off to them for running venues and bars and restaurants and nightclubs, because that's a whole other thing that I don't know, man.
It ain't easy. And
buddies,
not bags of money waiting for you if that's what you're interested in.
When I was younger, like I used to have my buddies, oh man, we should open up a place, man, and it's like, yeah. I don't know about that, man. I like my weekends and evenings off.
For
you
sure,
know?
yeah. I had that dream for a minute too, and I was like, yeah. Turns out it looks a lot like work.
Yeah, well, it is, and I think that whole grass is greener thing is with everything in life. You know, everything is cool until like I just did a show for there was a television show in Canada called Electric Circus, and I just did a reunion show for them. And I attended the first one, and I just provided production for the second one, and it was an absolute pleasure to do that because it was a show that touched me and a lot of people I knew. Even the guy who was one of the main DJs was a friend of mine, Nick, and another guy, Mike, and anyway, physically doing the second show, obviously I wasn't attending, I wasn't just hanging out. So it was more of that sort of, now being behind the scenes, having to do the work and, the stress and all that. So there's something to be said about being a patron and seeing it from that angle and having a good time and hanging out and drinking and going home. And then there's another thing about owning a venue or a bar.
Yeah, and making sure that everybody goes home and the sound is right and people are on time. And
and and you're not over serving, and there's so many aspects of that. But it's just that combined with just the way the real estate markets are right now. It's hard, venues traditionally, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of bars specifically, back in the day, be lucky to have 1 or 2 good nights a week. You'd have one, but having 2 or 3 was like, you're the place,
not common.
You're the place to be, but then you look at the restaurant model, which is what we saw during the pandemic, because you couldn't be open unless you were essential. So a lot of bars turned into restaurants, and a lot of them got a taste of that 7-day-a-week income and went, well, maybe we don't need to go back to what we had before.
Yeah. So you get that feel. Well, and I feel like, I don't know. I mean, you can see it, and I'll take this into the music retail. A lot of places don't have succession plans, and so bar is great. The place is cool. The founder goes away. There was no plan to keep it open necessarily.
Yeah.
And you see that particularly with music these days too, that what was happening in the past has the opportunity to time out if somebody doesn't pick it up, or
absolutely
there isn't a succession plan to keep it going.
Yeah. And I mean, I won't name any names, but I do know that there's a, fairly big, organization in the States that's going under right now and liquidating, and super sad. And, that just, again, shows, sometimes things have a sort of a shelf life, right?
Yeah, totally.
If you don't plan,
if you don't plan, they could be around for 100 years, and there's still you're not built forever, right?
Exactly.
And so you got to have that family interest or something to carry it forward, or a plan to carry it forward.
Which is pretty cool when you look at some of these brands, like, 50 years for Taylor, that's pretty impressive, but we just had the guys from Zildjian up here, and that's a 400-year-old company, man.
Can you believe that?
That's insane.
That's nuts. Yeah.
Like, 400. It's just bonkers. People see the name on symbols, but they have no idea, right? But I want to put that out there. Like, that's, shout out to Peter and the guys from Zildjian.
Yeah.
But it's like 400 years, man. That's something in music. Think
of the change in history and culture and everything that rolls with it.
Yeah.
That he just rolled through the whole along with it too. I mean, good times, bad times.
You want to talk about succession planning?
Yeah,
that's wild.
That is wild. I mean, I'm always impressed with 100. I'm really impressed with 100 years or 135 or something like that. 50 is extremely impressive.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just mind blowing.
Yeah, I know. We did a training seminar for their new e-kits that just came out, and they gave me like the 400-year hat, and I don't even wear hats. I'm keeping the hat.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? The 400th anniversary hat.
Heck yeah.
I'm keeping the hat.
Yeah, of course you are.
But yeah, man. So the band, the version of the band you're playing in now is called?
It's called Manganista.
Manganista.
Let me save you on that one. Manganista. Yeah.
Where does the band name come from?
It's just ultimately it was something that we created.
Okay.
At the end of the day, we created it. We were originally, I told you we were called the Reaganomics.
Yeah.
And we were a cover band. We became Scaramanga was the name of the band when we became an originals band. And that's a villain from a James Bond movie, Man with a Golden Gun.
Right.
And we were going to put some money into recording and be serious about getting something cut. We had enough songs to do an album. And I think the conversation was, well, we can't own Scaramanga. Like, that's just not going to be something that we can own.
Sure.
And so what do? We start throwing names around. And I don't know exactly how it happened, but our drummer actually had a blog. And this is long enough ago that it was a blog. And he was looking for recipes for salsa. And I think he called it
awesome.
The Manganista cookbook, and somehow, and so it was the derivative of Scaramanga into Manganista. We liked the Sandinista kind of clash, kind of association to it.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we Googled it, and the only thing that came up was something that our drummer had written on, and we just said,
"Done.
We own it." Well, I don't care what it means. It's kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
Let's just go with it. It just became who we were and what the band was. And our band is uniquely unidentifiable. It's hard to put us into we are just this. We'd always end up playing with ska bands because we had a bit of that rhythm section to it. But we could play with a heavy metal band or a hard rock band. And so we were always sort of in between different genres, and so I think the name also helped because it didn't really stick us into anything directly.
We got you sent I think a photo of in the regular photos essay.
There we go. So you have to appreciate these knuckleheads. Guy in front and center, Matt Ray, and I have been friends since the first grade. The guy behind us, Jason Thomas, right in the back, and Dusty in the top corner. Jason is the bass player. Dusty is the drummer. We've known each other since high school, and Steve, who's in the front, since a little bit after high school. And so we're just all old friends, right?
That's so cool.
And so at the very end of the day,
that's the best, actually.
This is in Jason's little house studio that he built years ago, and That's
I love the vinyl in the background.
Yeah,
so
we just the best. We've had some different people, different players. Steve joined the band not so long ago, old friend, but he came in as the keyboard player, and
sure.
And at one point we had a marimba player.
Really?
Yeah, marimba, and
That's
he had
awesome.
a vibraphone. Our old keyboard player used to play accordion on some songs, and so a lot of variety in the band. But again, we're just. If you're going to go hang out with your buddies, it's a great opportunity for us to just go hang out with our buddies. And
that's cool.
Matt constantly is writing new music, and he's a father of four, and just constantly has new ideas. And
did you just put a couple singles out or something?
Yeah, we put 2 singles out. We cut a 45.
Okay.
And one song's called Human Being. The other is called Angeline.
Okay.
And we paid to. We out of pocket do a pretty nice recording at a place called the Singing Serpent. It's a recording studio and not far from where I live in San Diego. And then we actually did a GoFundMe to press vinyl. And
dude, when you wrote to me that you did a 45, I was like, that's badass.
It is so much fun. I mean, we did CDs and we did a LP. We actually have an LP
sure.
Of our music. But to hear that needle drop and it's your band is different.
Like when I was DJing back in the day, I DJed on vinyl, right? And the only stuff I ever bought on 45 at the time was reggae, because all the stuff coming out of Jamaica was all, you were able to get what they used to call rhythms, right? You were able to get all these different reggae artists that sang on these different rhythms on 45 first. So we would buy the 45 rhythms, on 45. I had to drive to Toronto to get them. But that's the only 45s I ever played, right, as a DJ. So when you said, we released it on 45, I'm like, oh man, that is so cool.
I'll take it even further. So you were talking about community with music. A really good friend of ours who has at times played saxophone with us, runs a record label called Escape Hatch. And he's for years played in a ska reggae style band called Unsteady. They're now called Smoke and Mirrors Sound System. He picked up the album, right, and is paying to get another run of our 45 done. But then he took it and did a ska mix of the 2 songs.
Oh, wow.
And also a dub reggae mix of the 2 songs. And so we're going to be releasing a box set. Same 2 songs, but 3 different versions
of
each song in a little package, and
that is so
we got
cool.
great artwork, and there's gonna be some pop rocks in there. And
speaking of artwork, I pulled up. I don't know if I got any. If it's, I don't even know if it's yours. I went online.
Yeah, that's us. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's the 45 right there.
Pull it over for me, Essie. There you go. Human being, there it is.
So we have had a friend, our friend David has been doing artwork for us. Great artist, David Talbot in San Diego, and he's been doing this pulp sci-fi thematic. And so if you go through our records, there's these running themes, but the same guy doing the artwork, we'll pay him to get the idea out on a canvas, and then we use that. And so he's actually been doing a run with us, and there's been this cohesive art blend with all of the stuff that we've been doing for a few years. That's our LP right there.
That see when I saw this is so cool, because like you got the insert, it's even got some art on it. The whole thing, like the fact that the record's yellow and it kind of draws into the colors that are on the Saturn there, like it's all really, and that artwork's on. It's really well done. Like it's cool.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yeah. Well, it's that's the fun about vinyl coming back again. You get immersed in it, and you can actually be engaged with the, not just playing shuffle on your streaming channel, which I do.
There's a place for that.
A lot. There's a place for it, but to be able to again drop the needle and sit and listen to an album cover, an album side, and then switch it over. It's man.
It's that other level that I'm talking about. It's that community supporting level, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, you go to some shows and it's like, oh, we'll see you at the merch booth, and if you're, if you want to support the artist, you'll buy a CD, you'll buy a shirt, you'll buy whatever to support the artist. Mm-hmm. And this is no different. To me, this is even better, because you're buying the music again.
I agree. And I found from doing this, when we were trying to sell CDs, nobody wanted to give you any money for a CD, because they knew that it probably cost you did it yourself, and you probably didn't cost 10 cents or something like that to buy all the materials. But this actually feels like a product, something that I feel comfortable saying that there's a value to this, and people and fans and people who like the music feel good about participating and buying this product, because they know it didn't come up overnight.
Are you only doing the 45s, or is it on streaming platforms as well?
It's on streaming platforms as well. Yeah. Right. Manganista is on Apple Music and also Spotify. We're trying to get it out there as much as we'd like to have it just be records. And shoot, we even made cassette tapes.
No.
Yeah, we did we run a cassette tapes, which is,
that's awesome.
That was more of just a whim, but we had enough songs to make us a limited release, but we weren't going to go out and press vinyl on it, at least at that time.
Sure.
And so, Matt just one night got a wild hair and got some cassette tapes made,
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, again, these are buddies. We get a one night a week if we can. It's hard to get, we all have jobs and, our families and, other responsibilities. So to get 5 guys into a room on a regular basis is pretty tough if it's not your actual gig.
Right.
But it's worth it. And we continue to push forward. We got new songs coming, and that's fun to learn,
Yeah, man. Yeah, absolutely. And you got to keep it fresh. You got to keep it going, man. For the love of it all, right?
We've having a pretty good amount of songs that we've played over the years, and some of them we remember, and some we have to work on to retool. But you can become a cover band of yourself, even at this lower level, and so it is fun to have new songs and push forward. If we're gonna do it, we might as well make the most of it, right?
Absolutely. So what happened, sort of, you did the band thing, and then if I remember correctly, you worked at a music store at one point, right?
Yeah, I worked at a place called Guitar Trader in San Diego.
Yeah.
One of those things, I was building websites in the early 2000s, not very good at it. And I was a photographer, freelance. Okay. I was all right. And the idea came that, well, maybe you should get a part-time job, that something that just you can count. I could count on the income. And I literally got into this industry thinking, well, I could stand to save some money on guitar strings. That'd be cool. Mm-hmm. The band was just getting started. I was playing a little bit, but I started working as a photographer at Guitar Trader in 2000. I got hired on September 11th, 2001, at a guitar store in San Diego. And,
September 11th, 2001.
On the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Had the interview and got hired on that day.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And so I've been in MI since then.
It's a sign. You got to stay in it forever now.
Got to stay in it forever. But yeah, people are just staring at the TV, and as I was too. But I called him like, "Are we still doing this interview?" "Yeah, we're still doing this interview." "Okay, I'll be there."
Wow.
Yeah. And I worked as a photographer at Guitar Trader about 5 years. A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, actually a predecessor for me as a rep in Canada for Taylor, Steve Parr, got me the job at Taylor. Did you know Steve Parr?
I met him at a NAMM show once.
Okay, yeah. Rest his soul. We lost him last year.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
But we met at Guitar Trader, and then he moved on to Taylor a little bit ahead of me, and I was ready for a change, and that's where I went to Taylor, like 2005, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how that all sort of came to be, but yeah. So did you meet him at the store then?
I met him on that day, September 11th.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we were friends, and it was a good crew. It was one of those. It was a good crew at a guitar store. We were a variety of different guys that all looked like we worked at a guitar store. And no offense to anyone.
No.
No disrespect. Early 2000s especially,
Absolutely.
And a lot of great guys. And so it was, where I cut my teeth and didn't do as much sales as much as I was doing back administrative and shooting guitars.
What were you doing back then?
So back then I got hired as a photographer. So early web photos, multiple angles of guitars, and I had photo background. That's where I came from. And so I would take guitars off the wall and it wasn't just your front and back, and that was sort of frankly new at that time.
Imagine that.
And so it was a cool gig that I was shooting guitars, I was learning about instruments. I didn't realize, you never realize how little you know until you get into those new environments, and there's all these different brands and all these different things that I had no idea about. So I learned about that. But then I would start working on inventory, and it was a pretty good website early on, early 2000s. And so I helped support the website, and I was doing a little bit of everything. And then one thing led to another, and I needed to move on, and that's where I applied for Taylor. Didn't get the job initially, and then they came calling a little bit later when I wasn't expecting it, and made the move.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Customer service with Taylor to start with.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
To start with? Yeah.
Yeah, 7 years of customer service.
Wow. And that was all for like phone customer service?
Phone customer service, and then eventually, and it certainly grew, phone and email, but the email grew. But it was just have the phone ring and figure out what was on the other side of that ringing phone, and do your best.
Was there ever like celebrities that would call in, or did they have their own kind of like artist people that they would deal with?
Yes and no. I don't remember. What was his name? Egon Spangler from Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I got a voice message from him once.
No way.
And I was so eager to call him back and talk to him because he had questions about like taking a guitar on a plane. I think it was, but on my voice message, it was, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name right now.
Oh, I know, me too, and I'm a massive fan, and I'm racking my brain right now. But anyway,
directed, what was it, Caddyshack?
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so not here and there, but nothing that it was like, oh my God, that's amazing kind of moments, early Taylor Swift walking around the factory, when she was just a kid, that kind of thing. But again, different and not really a star kind of thing.
That's cool. And then, so your gig now is district sales manager?
That's correct. Yes.
For what region?
Canada. So I cover Canada, all the independent music retailers, your store, and a variety of others throughout the entire country. And then I also work with the Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. And so I'm the one that makes sure that stores have guitars in the selection that they need for customers to find their dream guitar.
Absolutely.
And Taylor has always been just a ton of respect for the company, and it's a fun gig.
So it started in so this is the 50th anniversary.
Yes.
1974, in Lemon Grove, California, as I come to understand it.
Yes. Lemon Grove, California.
Lemon Grove, sorry. My bad. Lemon Grove, California. And how did it, do you know the history? Like, how did it all sort of start?
So, it sort of gets ingrained into you with the culture. It's Taylor's a family. But Bob Taylor and Kurt Listug were kids, 19 and 21 years old, respectively. They worked at a guitar manufacturer in Lemon Grove called American Dream. And it was primarily Kurt's desire to own and run a guitar store. And Bob was the perfect person to partner with as far as his ability to understand building guitars. Bob was self-taught as a guitar manufacturer, and did it really for passion and just because, frankly, couldn't afford a guitar, so he learned how to build one for himself.
That's usually how most of those stories go, eh?
And just really good
Product
at
of necessity.
Machine shop and understood how to work the machinery and develop the art. So the company started 74. Lemon Grove is a suburb of San Diego, and as the story goes, it was the first 10 years were really tough. Build a guitar, sell it, have enough money to build another guitar and eat. Real hand to mouth for the first few years, and
sure.
But Bob was building based on what he liked, and so the guitars had real nice, stable necks, really thin. We got known initially because of the playability and comfort of our guitars, something that never really changed, and it just grew from there, and got through the, as we call it, the dark times for acoustic guitars, which was like the late 70s, early 80s.
What was, and there's a lot of people, young people sort of don't have a clue what that is. What was the dark times?
So the dark times, what we would refer to, those are the era when the most popular music were like disco, new wave, punk rock, very much not acoustic music, Sure. The classic rock, things that are known as like classic rock today people were moving on from Led Zeppelin and some of the more rock bands that would incorporate even acoustic music in, or the singer-songwriter thing. And so that was you had disco was huge.
Yeah, it was huge.
It was getting everybody's attention. And then you had, like I said, new wave, which was all digital. It was taking this digital format and really removing strings almost completely out of songs for a time.
Yep.
And so it was a period where popular culture was just not looking at stringed instruments the same way. And the irony is that Taylor was really small, and so the larger established companies were regressing while Taylor was just still pushing, doing what they knew how to do. But if there was, if you will, a silver lining for Taylor, was that they got a better foothold as this industry shrunk before it then expanded.
Was there anybody around that time that was a big supporter of theirs already?
I wouldn't say necessarily a big supporter. The big deal for us was that Neil Young played an early 855 on Rust Never Sleeps. It was 1979. And I think for Bob, that was a light bulb moment where it's like, okay, people are grabbing and gravitating towards these instruments, and this is worthwhile. We're going to do this. And then Prince played it. We built a 12-string for Prince in the.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. If you look at the Raspberry Beret video,
yep.
There's a 12-string in that. The only one that doesn't have our name on it, because it's Prince.
Because it's Prince.
But it's a purple 12-string in that. And that was, he found, again, the playability of the guitars was something he gravitated towards. We started working with colors around that time. And MTV was really, as we come to look back on it, the MTV Unplugged was one of the biggest lasting effects on both our company and the industry, because it brought people into acoustic guitars that never really considered playing them.
Right.
And so that's where the genesis, if you will, of the company really started. We started to grab hold and move forward, because our necks were super thin. Felt like electric guitar necks, and so we were really uniquely positioned at that point to gather more musicians and gain more attention.
Yeah, that's really cool. And then it at one point it obviously grew into more of a factory type situation. Like, what was the transition from 1-to-1 to that? Like,
so our original factory shop, 1,500 square feet, just not a very big place. It was just really, again, at a time where we were building a few guitars a year, had a top like 3 employees. It was Bob and Kurt, and Tim Larank was one of our first people that we hired just to shoot finish on the guitars. He had a buddy named Larry Breedlove that he brought in at some point. And,
the same, not from the same.
Yeah, same. Yeah,
okay.
And
cool.
So our beginnings were very, very small, but as that change happened, we moved to across. All of this is kind of the eastern portion of San Diego County proper, but there was a short time we were working in an area called Santee, but then that's when after that, I think in the mid 90s, it was 92 when I saw the factory. We moved into our current location and then just have expanded in our footprint from that area. And
how big is it now?
300,000 square feet.
Jesus.
I mean, all told, we have a factory in Tecate, Mexico, which is 40 minutes to an hour away from our factory in El Cajon, symbiotically working together. The two factories are really close, closely together.
If you would have asked me how big I thought it was, I wouldn't have said that it was that big.
Yeah, no, it's there's a lot of square footage. Well, you have to come down to San Diego and come see it. You haven't had this.
I'm in, man.
You haven't had this opportunity yet.
No, I know.
It's fascinating, and it's really, again, a tribute to Bob and Kurt's vision and willingness to hang in and grow what they felt was a good idea, and then they saw that there was a reason for it, and the guitars themselves then started to prove themselves as time goes on.
Yeah,
all based on comfort and ease of play, really.
That's really cool. And both guys are still there?
Yes. So they're these days. In 2021, they sold the company to us as employees. So speaking of a succession plan.
I saw that. That was interesting, eh?
And so what they decided, and Andy Powers too is our president and CEO, primary builder, they had the foresight. They didn't want, God forbid anything happens to them, they didn't want the company to have a different brand or be a part of a larger finance company's portfolio. And so very shrewdly, and took a long time to figure out, but we are an ESOP, and technically I'm a part owner, and all of us are part owners of the company now moving forward.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's a neat thing.
Essay, if you go to the photos for a sec, I did happen to pull a photo up of with Mr. Powers in it. Yeah, that one there.
Yeah, that's a great picture. Yeah.
How did that happen? Like, what was the reason for bringing Andy on?
Great question. Well, Bob's a smart guy, and he knows he's not going to be around forever. And he wanted to make sure that this thing that he and Kurt built as kids and grew to be something that is now a global company, we had to have a next step, right? And he wanted to have somebody run the company. Frankly, there was a list. He wrote a list of who he wanted to take his place. And the funny thing is that, people, whenever you tell Bob that he can't do something, that just makes him want to follow through even more. But he wanted somebody. To the background is that he wanted somebody who was a guitar builder run the company. He didn't want a sales guy or an economics guy. The accountant run the company. He wanted somebody that had the passion for the industry, for building. Run the company. So he had on his checklist, and this is still amazing to me, self-taught guitar builder that was a professional musician, had to have great knowledge of the history of stringed instruments, a background in the history of it, at least 20 years of building experience, but he wanted that person to be, if possible, under 30.
Yeah. Okay.
And lo and behold, this guy Andy Powers came into our lives. And
ask and you shall receive.
Ask and you shall receive. He started building when he was on his own when he was 8 years old. And just huge background and loved the history of music. Is a bluegrass guy deep down, and or at least his father was, and that's where his influences came.
Sure.
But he was building since he was 8. He was self-taught. He's an absolutely phenomenal guitar player and pro level musician, and so he just clicked off all of these boxes, and we were able to bring Andy in. He's a wonderful guy.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to meeting him next time if I go down there. Hopefully he's down there.
Yeah, well, usually they're around. Bob and so now at these days, you asked if Bob and Kurt were still around. Yes, the answer is yes. They're in an advisory state place. You know, they are on the board, if you will, for the company. Bob is doing spending a lot of his time working towards his sustainability efforts, the things that will allow us to have wood in the future.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What is, because I had it on the list to talk about later on, but we might as well talk about it now. What is that all about? Because we've talked about that before, about what you guys do there, and I think it's really cool. So what is the sustainability effort thing all about?
Well, it comes down, ultimately, I think the root of it is that we like working with wood in guitars and not synthetics.
Sure.
And in order to be able to do that, there's a finite amount of that material in the world, or at least remaining in the world. And so it was an interest of Bob's to be able to make sure that in the future, not just beyond him or in his lifetime, but beyond his lifetime, that there is an opportunity for these materials like ebony to be around and not just dried up. And so it started, he took a trip to Africa to see where ebony was coming from, and he realized that there was just a tremendous amount of waste of ebony to go into the bush. At that time, historically, you know, you think about the Stevie Wonder song "Ebony and Ivory," you just think it's pure black. The material is just pure black. Your keys on your piano are always just going to be pure black ebony. Well, most trees don't grow just pure black ebony. And as it turns out, if the folks who have to go into the bush and pull this literally by hand, because there's not roads to go in to get to these trees,
right?
The only way you would know if it was the right color was to cut the tree down.
Oh, wow.
And so you cut the tree down and you say, color's not right. And so you move on to the next tree and you cut that tree down.
Oh, my.
And so when ultimately, I mean, I'm paraphrasing a lot of this, but
sure.
ultimately, as Bob saw these trees just laying there, 1 in 10 trees being able to be used, to him, it was there were two things. Either you don't use the material anymore, or we have to figure out a way to make this better. And so it started really with that, and just
that's heavy, man.
A very sleepless night on his part. And
yeah.
We partnered with a company called Medenter. It's a company out of Spain, and purchased the mill in Cameroon, and started there. And then what we actually did was started putting variegated ebony into our 800 series, you know, not just putting it under our baby tailors, but take this smoky ebony and show that there's value to it. And so then we had to go through and change the popular perception of this material, because there's no physical detriment to the look. It was purely cosmetic.
Sure.
And so what that allowed us to then do is utilize more of the material that's around us, as opposed to wasting it and leaving it on the forest floor. And that's where it started. Then it was pulling it into this facility in Cameroon, and being able to improve the experience, the life experiences that people were having there, as far as working for our company that could be counted on, and raising up this mill, and then also utilizing more of the material. It then went further with us working with UCLA, who had a laboratory or a facility in Yaoundé, in the same place we were at in Africa.
Oh, really?
And we worked with them to actually figure out how to propagate ebony, because there wasn't really an understanding on how to replant an ebony tree,
which is a huge problem for sustainability.
Exactly. And so all of these things sort of stacked on each other, where we built this facility that was then appropriately taking material out, using all of the material that we could, as opposed to leaving it on the forest floor, working with the local community really to then be able to replant trees. And I think we're at 25,000 planted trees at this point for the future, and along with fruit trees and other needed resources for the people that live in that area. So obviously ebony, you can't eat or get medicine from ebony.
Sure.
So, but everybody there lives out of the forest. And so then it's also working with the communities to plant fruit trees and other trees to keep the forest there. And as we pull out, we're trying to have it be a sustainable process. Now, one thing that I've been taught, and it's been really hammered, is sustainability is not a destination; it's a journey, right? And you never get there, and so you continue to find ways to appropriately manage the materials that we have, and it's become, as I've heard Bob say, it's just he's reinvesting in the thing that made him his fortune, and that's the wood, that's the material, and so now it's grown to be a plantation on the Big Island of Hawaii, 500 acres, where we're working to plant koa for a unlimited source or a long time source for that material to grow.
Wow.
And it's and even to the point that we're actually now figuring out that we can go with urban trees.
Oh, we talked about this.
Yeah. So your 514 that you have in the store here, that's urban ironbark, and that comes from Southern California. We don't have to necessarily go all around the world to procure this material. I think the expression farm to table really comes to light. We figured out that with all of the trees that are surrounding us, and a lot of them are not natural to, especially in Southern California, those trees are not really natural to the environment. But there is a company called West Coast Arborists, basically the stewards of all of those trees. And as they pull them out and put them in their lumber yard, we found and started taste testing material to then widen the palette, if you will.
Yep.
And so it's not just these vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. You have all these different flavors that you can play with.
That's really cool. And I like that, I like how you put it with him sort of investing in the things that helped him make, what he did happen. I would say he's also, like you said, he's not just putting in ebony trees, he's putting in fruit trees, and I would say he's also between that and the move that he made to make all of you guys part owners of the company, I'd say he's investing in the humans too, in the people.
Absolutely.
And so it's a combination, I think, right? Like I've what I've managed to do here from nothing, similar to what they've done, in terms of it starting from nothing. It is all about the resources and the people, and so it's very, very smart what he's and what they're doing, because it will be sustainable. They really have obviously thought about this. It's awe-inspiring, the fact that that you guys are doing what you're doing in all those sort of pockets. Like the fact that you're looking domestically at, hey, what can we get from here? And you've built, you're building an entire series on that now. And like, that's cool. And I didn't even realize that. And then, the sustainability of what's being done in Africa. Like, it's one thing to do it in your own, country or area. It's another thing to do it in Africa. Like, it's another thing to do it in some of those areas, like I think you said Nigeria, right?
Oh, well, Cameroon.
Sorry. Cameroon. But yeah, even Cameroon, like it's like that's no joke, right?
No, yeah, the city of Yaoundé is not an easy place to get around, right?
No, like that's
a lot of folks living there.
Like when that was all going down, do you know? Like, was he there? Wow.
Yeah, he was. We had a team.
Crazy.
There was a team that lived there. Our CFO was there for a time, and it was a program that many of my colleagues and coworkers did spend time there to establish this, because it wasn't just we're going to go in, take some pictures of us doing some nice things, and then we'll wrap and get out of here. It was with the intention that this is a lasting investment, or at least as long as it's sustainable, to keep it going. And so, yeah, it went from, being a very simple rudimentary mill to something that is actually quite modern, and the people that work there are just as much part of the Taylor family as I am, and
Absolutely.
But yeah, he was there for a very long time. Different people took long periods of time to be there and really live in that environment, to understand it, and then also help grow this idea.
Wow. That's really cool. I don't know of anyone else doing that. Like the whole sustainability thing. I haven't, like, to that level anyway. I haven't heard of anybody, and especially like the founder of the company physically going there and spending time there like that. Like if it's happened, awesome, incredible. More people should do it, but I haven't heard of it.
Well, I think you were starting to hear more, because it is a reality of the situation that this is the materials that we use are finite. And so thankfully, and to Bob's credit, he's gone out and pushed a little bit to open the eyes of other manufacturers. And there are people that are out there doing it as naturally as he did it, maybe not, but
they should be talking about it.
He certainly didn't do it so that he can pound his chest. He did it literally so he could sleep at night and feel better about where we are and who we are as a company. And it was one of those things where it was like, if nobody's going to do it, then I guess I have to do it. Let's go, and fortunately or unfortunately, it looks like it's me that has to do it, and our company.
I get that, man.
And so
I get that.
Are there other things that we'd like to be doing? Sure. There's always other things that you'd like to be doing, but this is important. And ultimately, hopefully we can gain momentum. It'll gain momentum, right? And so it becomes more commonplace, and that it becomes the value of what we're trying to accomplish is seen on a variety of different, and for a variety of different companies.
Totally. So we'll bounce back up. So some of the artists that play Taylor, I wrote a few down that I saw on the website: Christopher Cross, George Strait, Alan Jackson, the Struts. They seem to be promoted quite heavily by you guys. Some Canadians: Sarah McLachlan, Shawn Mendes, and then of course Zach Brown. I mean, Zach Brown's a legend. I'm going to see him with Kenny. Actually, he's opening up. It's a dual show: Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown together.
Oh, sweet! Oh, that'll be a great show.
So
my God, yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. And the Taylor Swift thing, like you said, she was there kind of when she was super young and stuff, and like has her, like, what's the deal? Because she's had some pretty recent success, blowing up. Have you guys sort of seen that impact the brand at all?
Well, the way that I will put this is yes, because you see so many kids interested in playing guitar. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
Directly, maybe not so much, and that's fine. She's a very large very successful artist.
Yeah.
But what I love and what I am seeing, and this comes back down to my little niece, she's wanted an ukulele because she wants to learn how to play music because she wants to be Taylor Swift, and it's like, God bless that. I had Kiss there's always that motivation, but we don't live in an era where the rock gods are out there anymore. Like you had, and so, but there is Taylor Swift, who is a rock god, and goddess, and it's that motivation. So I think it's more back end, if you will. We'll see the benefit. The industry sees the benefit of her going out and inspiring youth, and people to go out and play.
Absolutely. Well, she's selling. She's doing what very few people, and I say very few because look at how many people have the dream, and then look at how many people can sell a tour in a club circuit, and then go to a theater level, and then go to a arena level, and then, look at what she's doing.
Yeah.
And so there's very few people that get to that level. So good on her and her team and everyone connected to her for doing that. Because, though some of those types of tours, and I've seen many of them at that level, are phenomenal. Like the energy, is absolutely phenomenal. And it is really a life-changing experience when you're with that many people watching that level of production with some songs that you love. It doesn't matter whether you're a Taylor Swift fan or a Kenny Chesney fan or a Kiss fan or a U2 fan,
the unity
or
of the
Coldplay
crowd
fan
and that energy,
or whatever.
that you can feel. It's phenomenal.
It is. So good on her and her team for putting that together. And I do think that will inspire a lot of people. Obviously, a lot of girls. That's phenomenal. I have been seeing and will love to continue to see more and more women get into all. We got a band from here in town called Kitty. They're about to release a huge new album. They were big back in the day, took a break, and now they're back, and they're headlining these massive metal festivals, playing for no less than 50,000 people. But the two sisters are from here in town. They're phenomenal players. They do sometimes rehearse here, and I'm listening to them, and I'm just like, man, this is unbelievable how good these girls are. And women now. And so, all of them are just so inspiring to the younger generation of women coming up. And I hope that more and more of them play, and I hope that more and more of them get into it, because you know what? I'll be honest. It really, I know not kids are not for everyone, but the moms that become successful, I mean, those kids come up, and those little girls are coming up, and they're seeing it happen with their moms, and it's like, man,
it multiplies.
Oh man, it's so good. The material is so good, and it's so inspiring to see more and more of that music, because usually it's positive music, like not in all cases, right? Like, death metal is not always positive. But in most cases, you're seeing, even if it's, like the Taylor Swift, some of her earlier stuff, obviously more poppy, but that's just to try to grab that really super young audience. But, when you start to see some of these artists mature and get to a point where their music is really touching people, cross generations, the Celine Dion's and all these types of people, right? The Shania Twains, and that's when it's really super awesome. That's when you start to see what I want to see, which is this sort of wave of positivity in the world.
Sure.
And it can happen. And it's a funny thing, women listen to women and women listen to guys. But guys generally only listen to guys, right? So, I'm really passionate.
It's true.
It's totally true. And there's a lot of women in the world. So I really do think that we need, some really passionate, powerful, strong, positive women in the scene to help build this community as we do on the way back up from the pandemic. I think
the confidence of being able to say this is okay, right? And you belong, and not have it just be this masculine dominate.
Doesn't have to be, man.
It doesn't have to be. And I don't think people necessarily were looking at it that way, but there is a shift happening, and all the way down to the guitar store level, where
Amen.
When I worked at a guitar store, it was a kind of a dude's place, and we missed, looking back, probably a lot of opportunities, because we were not. I wouldn't say that store was necessarily particularly comfortable for women to just come in and hang around or feel welcome, And I think that's something good that the MI industry has learned, and is making it more approachable for everybody to come in and play guitar.
Everybody.
And it starts with those musicians, but it also has to do with, what you and I are doing at the store level.
Yeah. 100%. And when I'm hiring here for the store, I look at everything. I look at everyone. Obviously, people who have experience, people who have passion, people who have drive, where I can tell it's like, oh yeah, this person really wants it. Okay, well that person, regardless of whether they're male, female, like doesn't matter. If that person really wants it, I can see it. I'm like, yeah, okay, they vibe with us, cool. But I really do try to look for women to get into our, into what we do. And I'm trying to foster that as much as I can, whether it's in sales or marketing or data entry or photography or whatever it is, trying to get them involved. And and I've seen, where, even on staff here, we have a girl here, Casper. We have a video that she did of a keyboard up on YouTube that people can check out. But she's got a band called Gravity Wagon, and
That's a good name.
and they're getting and it's a cool band, and it's like it's funk and stuff, and I love that stuff, and they're getting bookings all over the place. So it's funny now because I'm having promoters call me. And they go, yeah, we need to book a stage, a stage line and production, for this festival and this community, whatever. And I'm like, okay, who are the bands? And they list this band and this band and this band. Oh, and the headliner is Gravity Wagon. And I just start laughing, right? I'm like, oh, this is awesome. This is great.
Yeah, full circle.
Hey, it's Gravity Junkie.
Gravity Junkie.
Still a very good name.
Thank you, SA. Thank you so much.
Correction.
Gravity Junkie.
Gravity Junkie.
That's it. It's even better.
Even better.
But yeah, it's but you know what? Phenomenal group of people in that band. We had them play our staff, or it was our anniversary party that we do for London Guitars every year, every few years. We do this anniversary party, and they did a great job. And I really want to continue to support. More of that, more of this sort of, positive community building. Let's get everybody involved. Everybody, like you said, let's make it so that everybody can be involved. And I think that, anyway, point being, I think Taylor Swift, has been a real good beacon for a lot of women, young girls and women to inspire them to get into playing the ukulele,
totally.
or whatever it is.
You got to start somewhere, right? And you got to have a reason to get into what you want to do, and you have no idea what the journey is going to be. But if you feel like you're going in some direction, and you have that support, or you feel you have that beacon, and so then it just grows from there. And
absolutely,
hopefully, I'm sure she won't be the last. Maybe she might be one of the best, but who knows? Who knows what this spawns?
We're we are a blip in time right now. Mm-hmm. Like, if you think about the last, when did the electric guitar get made?
Sure, you're talking Les Paul, right? So that's only a couple of generations ago.
Right? We're a blip in time.
Yeah.
So, we have exponentially so much time to come, so many more generations to come, so much more influencing, and we're just getting going.
And we have no idea what's still out there. I got to see a show at the Sphere in Las Vegas, and I firmly believe that there's a future, and that won't be the only venue like that. Now that I've seen what's possible with something like that.
I think there's going to be one like that in every major city in the world eventually.
I mean, it's astonishing, and they're only scratching the surface on something like that.
I was just saying to Deb in the episode before this that, it's funny because, how many millions of shows have been played in hockey arenas, but those venues were never invented for music, right?
Oh God, yeah.
But I love the fact that when they were launching the Sphere, that was a real big part of the conversation was, those venues were never designed for music, but this one is.
Yeah, the sound is astonishing. And I grew up in San Diego with the sports arena, which was just this metal skeleton. It's the worst sound, to see. And most of my favorite concerts were at that venue, and it's like, my God, it was just, there's just nothing you can do,
Would you say that open air is one of the better ones? Like open air concerts are some of the better. I
tend to like open air venues. I've had the chance to go to Red Rocks, right, and see shows where it's the environment contributes to the show. And I like open air shows. It's not to say that I don't want to go to that because it's all closed in. I'll go see a show.
Yeah, of course.
But again, because those hockey arenas are not built for them, it's always like, I guess we got to go see them there. And the Sphere struck me because one of the feelings that I had was I felt like I was in an open air venue while I was inside of it. It didn't feel enclosed.
I haven't been, so I'm interested to see this.
So because they have such great control of the environment, the actual environment, it felt like I was outside, and there was there was a value to that, I guess would be the best way I'd put that. And not only the control of the sound, but it didn't feel congested. It didn't feel clogged. I like little venues, little club venues are some of my favorite things to do. So there's always an opportunity to, go see that or go see a show in a big arena, but I'd rather go into those small ones or probably outdoors, I guess, to answer your question.
Yeah. I mean, in Canada, because we're in Canada and it snows here for 3/4.
Yeah, I'm in Southern California. I get a little bit longer tail.
Yeah, we have no choice. We have to, the arena thing is the thing for us. Sure. We have to do it because artists are doing summer summer festivals. So the tours really do happen in Canada in the fall, winter, and spring, and the weather ain't great here. So
I've read.
Yeah. So we don't. yeah. It's not. So we don't have a choice. We have to utilize the arena venues, and I'll be honest. Some of them actually sound pretty decent. You know what? I mean, they've gotten a lot better with drapes and there's different things they've done. The material on the seating. Even just the shape, all kinds of stuff that's gotten better over the years for some of the newer arenas. But we at this point we don't have a choice. I mean, the amount of money that it took to build the Sphere, was insane. So, I'm sure
it's Vegas money. You can do something like that in Las Vegas, but I think now that it's out there, I think people will start to. Oh, okay. We want to have. It'll be interesting to see what the next city is. I'm curious to see how that evolves.
I would say probably like a Dubai or
that's a what I was
like China or somewhere in like Beijing or something. I mean, you need that concentration of people that are going to support it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. That have some dough to come out and support these shows.
Well, then you also need the bands to be able to create the experience too, which is its own thing.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. Hence why they should buy Taylor guitars.
All buy and play Taylor guitars in a live format. Yeah.
So the only other one I wanted to touch on was B&L. And, we have Bungie here, of course. And so before Music City Canada became a Taylor dealer, that was one of the things Bungie was pushing for because London Guitars, that department's been open since 2016. Uh-huh. And, one of the things Bungie was pushing for was, you got to get Taylor, man. You got to get Taylor. And... And so, I think I got a photo of Ed playing his Taylor, which is a W10, as I found out today, or I think.
Yeah, there was a time when we were doing,
or at least that's what he's playing now.
A whole walnut series of guitars, like the Koa series.
Yeah, there it is. So what is that? What is he playing there?
Yeah, W10. So 10 being the dreadnought body shape. We had W meaning walnut. Just like the Koa, you have a K24 behind me, Builder's Edition K24.
Yeah.
There was a time, some of the materials that we use, again, is not indefinite. And so grafted walnut at that time, Bob particularly was fond of building with walnut. And so we had a W series, but yeah, it's a beautiful all walnut guitar he's playing there.
And
fun band.
And is there? Oh, absolutely, 100%. And is there materials that like already have been retired because of availability?
Well, I mean, look at Brazilian rosewood, right?
Right.
If you're going to build something new with Brazilian rosewood, you probably had that material for the last 20 years at least. And there are. It comes and goes. It really there will be certain materials that will be plentiful for us. We want to know where the source is, right? And so it's important to us that if a supply of a particular wood, cocobolo, for instance, is a real popular tone wood that sits in that rosewood, almost Brazilian rosewood pocket. If we can't see where it came out of the ground, then we have to be at least wary of that. And so, but trees don't grow quickly, and once you cut them down, you don't get them again
especially if you don't use them.
Especially if you don't use them. And so that's where we do spread out. We've used things like sassafras or myrtle wood, and they all have different tonal structure to them, which is part of the fun.
So do you come out with like a new series for those woods? Is that how that's been going?
Usually it's like a limited edition run.
Okay.
Typically, unless they're like if we're working with something like urban ironbark or urban ash from our urban forestry program, we have a good sense of that's going to be available. Koa, there are times when Koa can be hard to come by because it's just the trees haven't been procured, or the sources literally dry up, and it takes a minute to find an appropriate source for those materials. And so, but the urban, or again, like the urban ironbark or the urban ash, working with a company like West Coast Arborists, we can have a pretty strong idea of what the future is going to be looking like for that. Rosewood, Indian rosewood, has been a very sustainably procured wood for us, because it's typically those trees are used to protect tea plantations in India. And so they are replanted and taken down and replanted. And so we've really been sourcing, like Indian rosewood is actually has a pretty consistent background. But those nuanced woods can be harder, and it's hard to, we build a lot of guitars in a year, and so we have to be able to anticipate that material is going to be available through the year, and not only that year, but moving forward. And so we're looking at things. We've started putting 4-piece tops into our 814 Builders Edition, for instance, with Adirondack, so that we can get ahead of the fact that Adirondack trees aren't getting wider. They're the supplies that we had even 20 years ago are different than the supplies that we have now. Popularity of the industry having an effect.
Sure.
Good news is you could build a lot of guitars out of a tree, right? You can only build so many tables or chairs.
This is true. Yeah.
You can get a lot of instruments out of it. So we can feel a little bit better that we're using everything as much as possible.
Has there ever been any talk of using any Canadian woods?
Yeah, well, we use maple. Our maple is...
The maple comes from Canada?
Yeah, maple comes from Canada. Walnut is a North American. We are actively looking for material that is North American grown, because we can, again, know where it's from. The property is owned, or we know where the location is. Spruce mostly comes from the Northwest, but that's you're talking BC, over there, and so there is definitely material, and yeah, the maple we use for a lot of our guitar necks comes from Canada.
Amazing, incredible.
But you got to just keep your eyes open, and we have people that are just constantly looking for those resources. But then you got to put it together and see if it's workable, and if you can work with it, if you can dry it out and then reshape it, and does it sand? Does it, what happens to it in these environments, and then what does it sound like? And so, because the nature of those woods will have an effect on the overall experience that you have playing your guitar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is where we have so many different series, and they all have value.
That's what I was getting at earlier. Like why all the different series, and that was sort of, I guess, what I was.
Because I always use the ice cream analogy, because not just chocolate and vanilla, right?
Yeah, right.
You want to have different flavors. Those are good flavors, but you don't want to have There's a few ways that I like to talk about this. We are creating the tool that creates the muse, right? And the size of the body and the materials used in that body are going to have different effects on how the overall experience of playing is. And so when you have a very large rosewood 12-string, that's a whole different experience than maybe a smaller grand concert 12-fret that's made of all mahogany.
Sure.
And as an artist, as somebody who's creating music, holding those different instruments brings out or elicits different ideas and different levels of creativity. But then also, if I have a song, a big boomy 12-string might not be the answer for a song, but a mahogany grand concert with a soft touch and finger style. So the idea is how you attack the guitar. I use an analogy of paintbrushes. You don't make a painting with just one paintbrush. You're using a fan brush. You're using something for detail. You're using something to cover a large area. And if you're looking at a guitar as a paintbrush, you need those different nuances to create your art.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the most popular shape?
For Taylor, 1994, I'll go back into our history a little bit, 20 years into our company's existence, our 20th anniversary, Bob created a guitar called the Grand Auditorium. And I am seeing one right behind me here.
Yeah.
Grand Auditorium really became, it wasn't supposed to necessarily be this end all be all. We had started working with what we called our Grand Concert, which is right over there. Very small, easy to play, fits nice in your lap, as opposed to a big dreadnought guitar. Bob created this Grand Auditorium body shape, and it was the body shape that can do a little bit of everything. And when people really think of Taylor, it created this modern sound. There are folks that aren't as fond of Taylor because we are not the tradition of guitar playing, and I think the Grand Auditorium is part and parcel with that. It's a modern sound. It's great for recording. It's great for a coffee shop environment, but you can strum it, you can finger pick it, you can flat pick it, you can do all of these different things, and it holds up underneath that. And so that is really, for Taylor, or anything ending with a 4, 814 is really our 814 CE is really our flagship model. If you were to ask me to hand you what Taylor, the best jumping off point, I'd put an 814 in your hand, and then you move from there.
And then what's the Builder's Grade thing all about? What's that for people that don't know?
Builder's Edition is a very cool thing. So as I said earlier, Andy Powers, being a professional musician himself, we call it like the director's cut. You know, it's like the 4-hour version of Apocalypse Now. You know, like it's where Andy said, I need to put some nice finite touches on this guitar as a player that make the experience of playing that much more comfortable. So if I'm going to be sitting in a studio, or if I'm going to be sitting on my couch, these touches on these guitars that take a little bit more time. So all of the edges on the guitars are chamfered, so they're rounded. They're not coming to a hard angle, so you're not going to get that line on your arm when you're playing. They usually have armrests. Even the bridge is slightly rounded. It's because our trademark bridge is fairly pointy, and your hand is going to rest there. So little touches on the guitar that make the overall playing experience subtly that much more enjoyable. Edges on the fretboards are slightly rounded, so it feels like it's been played in a little bit. You can see the cutaway on that guitar allows you to get all the way up to the very highest fret on the guitar. So those are Builder's Edition models. The satin finish is what we call silent satin. Silent satin, Andy, again, would say, well, a glossy guitar is great, but I sweat when I play, and that makes me squeak. And that squeaking sound bugs me. And so we'll put a satin finish. Moreover, it's a smoother satin finish, so it doesn't also make noise if it rubs against your shirt while you're in a really high fidelity microphone. But all of the Builder's Editions are really Andy Powers saying, I don't hang the cost, hang the extra time necessary to build it. These are things that I believe make it a better experience to play. And I feel that guitar players are going to enjoy these touches too.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. No, 100%. And I think that sometimes that's, there's obviously, like anything else, there's people that really are passionate, and as a buyer, as a player, they're passionate and they dive into it and they figure all that out. But thank you for sharing that, because there's a lot of times when people don't, like, they'll show up in the store and they'll just pull it off the wall and they don't really know why they like it. They just like it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But to hear you explain it makes a lot of sense, and all those little things is what makes it an incredible guitar. Like, I've had people, when I do the tour here, and I take people into that room, into our premium room, and they pull that off the wall. They're like, "Oh man, this is a really nice guitar," and they don't even really know why, because obviously, if you, like, now that you've mentioned, like, even the bridge, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, yeah. And I mean, I own that guitar. It's been sitting here for how long, and I didn't even see it.
Well, it's just very, very subtle. Yeah, just a nice little touch to it that. It's interesting that you said what you said as far as the why. That's, I think, the important thing that you or the guys on the floor, when somebody comes in, we live around these guitars all the time, and so there's an understanding better of why there's so many different shapes and sizes and everything. Yeah. But somebody who doesn't play that much, it can be very intimidating. And then you look at the price, and that doesn't help. And so it's being able to clearly identify.
I try to get them to play it first.
Yeah, this there's a reason. One, there's a lot of time and material and expense that went into building this guitar, but the shape is intended. You're not a very big person. Maybe this smaller size body is going to be better for you.
Yeah.
When you look at that wall of all of these different choices, if somebody's not familiar with it, it can be quite intimidating. And so it's really important to be able to highlight the why. This is why this guitar exists, different than that. You were asking earlier why all the different models.
Yeah.
Because there is different application for them and a purpose. I joke when I've done presentations that it's my job to give you a reason to have every single one of these guitars in your home. And there's frankly, if you are in a place to do it, you can have, and there's, because each one has its own unique properties. It's like wine, it's a little subtle to, it's when you're not used to wine, it's white or red, but then you get into those nuances. I'm not much of a wine guy, but I know that you can delve really deep into
absolutely,
the flavor and the nature of these different reds and
even different types of reds or whites from different countries.
How they
regions.
Work with whether you're having a steak or fish.
Oh, absolutely.
And all of that really plays into acoustic guitars and validates why we have so many different options, because you can use them in so many different ways.
So when we talk about all the different series, there's obviously a number of them that are coming out of the Mexican factory. What was the reason to go to Mexico and not do what a lot of other people have done and go overseas?
Good question. The factory in Tecate, again, is an hour away from our main plant.
Yeah, right, because you're in the,
So it is within, it's not the same neighborhood obviously, but it is very close to where we're at. It originally started as the place where we manufactured our cases.
Oh, really?
And so we manufacture all of our hardshell cases and the majority of our gig bags. It's a gigantic upholstery department. It's fascinating. It's almost as fascinating to watch that be built as the guitars themselves.
Do you go down there?
Yeah, recently I've had the opportunity to go a couple of times, and it's the facility itself is really modern. Actually, more modern than our U.S. facility, because it was built as a Taylor factory, and so it makes sense, if you will, as far as you move through the building.
Yeah.
But what it grew into was a way to be able to build more guitars faster, and that's where we build all of our guitars that have layered wood backs and sides, machined wood backs and sides. I don't like to say laminate. It's 3 layers of wood that are glued together basically, but our 200 series and down are made there. So we started with our gig bags and our cases. Then we started making our baby Taylors and our big baby Taylors. And now it's to the point where we make our 200 series. To answer your question, it really goes back to it's our guitar. When it's overseas, you can't monitor production. It's a different company. It becomes a different company. And I think Bob's, and I'm paraphrasing here, so I might be going a little over my skis, but at the same time, with Bob's ability to understand production and our company's understanding of production, we want to be hands-on. And most of what we build proprietarily. We build it ourselves, our electronics, our cases. We want to have our hands on it. And so as opposed to going overseas, while there might be a cost benefit in doing that, say something goes wrong and they put 100 guitars on a container to send it across the ocean. Well, you don't know that something's wrong until it lands and you get your hands on it. And so the speed in which we can adapt is key, is very important to us. But then also we are one factory. The employees down there are also employee owners, just like I am.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
wow.
And so it is the family aspect. It is keeping it in-house. And because it is so close, production managers go to both facilities back and forth. Materials are transferred back and forth in the building of the guitars. And so it remains Taylor and not an outsourced production company. Now, I can see the value and understanding of doing that, but even through COVID, it benefited us because we were building our own product. And so it really came down to material availability.
Yeah.
More than we were able to adapt to keep everyone healthy to be able to work, because if somebody got sick and they got somebody else sick, then production ceases, right? And so it was one hand led the other, right? We were able to get in a safe environment, and then also keep producing guitars in a time when there was a lot of demand,
I think the elephant in the room for a lot of manufacturers, I know Shure Microphones from Chicago, they make mics in Mexico too. And I mean, obviously we know the USMCA free trade agreement helps with that, Mexico, US, Canada. So there's those reasons. But it's interesting. Like I have a perspective now from you explaining it that way that I didn't have before. And I think the elephant in the room is that, when people think about, oh, well, this guitar is made in the USA, they see it as a more premium thing, and fine, rightfully so. However, I think what you're explaining is very interesting, because the fact that of how much the two are woven together into one, it's like now you explaining it, I don't really see there being much of a difference between the U.S. and Mexico.
You're right on.
Yeah,
the materials change that we're building with, but the expectation of quality is consistent.
And I think that explains to me, because I obviously have a number of the 200 series and down here, and we've sold a bunch of them and reordered, and one of the comments that I get is, wow, this is a really nice guitar for X, right? Whatever that dollar value is. And that's how you're able to do it, right? Is there's that consistency, because it is your factory. You do have people on the ground there. They do have ownership in it. Like, the whole thing is so, honestly, man, so well thought out, so well dialed in. I love it. It's great.
Appreciate that. Yeah,
it makes sense.
Yeah, and it's fun to be able to talk about, because it isn't smoke and mirrors, right? It's exactly what it is. It is.
No, and you know what? I think what I think is ironic about that statement is I think people are looking for the smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
Like, I think people are so used to that now that they're like, oh, well, it's probably not as good, right? And they don't even give it a chance. Yeah. But it's like, no, I've held these guitars. I've seen people that love these guitars, and they don't really know why, but hopefully they watch this video and they're like, this pod, and they're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah. The quality, I'm very confident in the quality of our Mexico factory. It's not cost effective for us to build a bad guitar, because we'll have to fix it.
Yeah, right. Well, that's what I was going to say when you were talking about the Orient.
Yeah.
Like, you put 100 guitars in a container and ship it across. Yeah, you're not going to figure it out till it gets here. But then any money you saved by making it there,
you're
going to eat it by fixing it.
Yeah. And so when you build it, the goal is always to build it right the first time, not because we're prideful and want to tell you that we're the best. We just want that guitar to work and you to be happy.
Yeah.
And enjoy playing guitar. Because if you do that, then maybe you'll buy another guitar.
Yeah. Or
you'll become a world famous performer that drives people to buy guitars. I mean, sure, there's the selfish angle. We want to sell more guitars, right? And to do that, we have to build good quality product and get people excited about it.
You guys didn't have a problem selling guitars for the last 3 years. I mean, truth be told, as you know, I wanted to be a Taylor dealer years ago, but you guys did such a great job of building the company up over the, 47 years before that, once the pandemic hit, I mean, you guys couldn't keep up.
No, we couldn't keep up at all. And it was a very interesting time, because there was so many different challenges. But at the end of the day, there were a lot of people at home looking to make the time pass, or, and I look at it as either people were learning how to play guitar, or they knew how to play guitar and it was time to upgrade.
Sure. Yeah.
And I know I played a heck of a lot of guitar, more than I ever really did.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that did, man.
And
a lot of time.
And so if there was, again, a silver lining in a really tough period, it was that, we were forced to be at home with our families and our spouses, and hey, lo and behold, we have a product that allows for creativity and bonding and in an ideal situation, nurture a family idea, and community and all of those things. And
so for those people that don't have your perspective, because I don't even really have your perspective, I would love to know your perspective on what were those 3 years like from an order taking, order supplying, because I mean, you know, people would shop, you know, some people are really super faithful to the retailers they buy from. Usually those people are more old school. Some people are not as faithful, you know, in a sense that, hey man, if you can't get this thing for 6 months and I can get it from X store, you know, I'm going to go there. And a lot of times they won't even tell you, they'll just do it, whatever. And that's all good. I mean, we all do. You know, I shop at 4 different grocery stores every week. So, to get what I need. But it's like, I think it's one of those things where we don't have, even at the retail level, we don't necessarily have your perspective from a rep of a manufacturer that's like, that has this hose trying to put out this fire that's just massive. And so what is that perspective like? What was that like?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it was wild. There was everything changed every day. Right. Like, because any plan, you have to have a plan, right? And you have to execute a plan, but you have a plan so that you know how to change the plan because material X isn't available or material Y is stuck on a freighter on the coast of Long Beach and it's going to be months before it even parks, right? You have an exceedingly high demand, which was wonderful. A lot of people wanting guitars and a lot of stores saying, when is this coming? And a lot of me saying, I genuinely don't know. The good news for Taylor was because we keep so much close to the vest, we were able to trickle guitars out. And we weren't waiting for the tanker necessarily to provide our product.
All your product.
All of our product. There were pieces, but that you could pivot on. So a pickguard color would change because we simply couldn't get tortoiseshell, or a tuner manufacturer wasn't available. And so you'd have to change certain aspects. And I had a ton of respect for our logistics team.
Oh, can't even imagine.
Oh my God. I mean, it was an adventure for me. I had to learn video.
Yeah,
I had to learn how to shoot and edit and create video to communicate with the stores that I couldn't normally be here sitting with and talking to. And so we had to create an environment of communication and also be able to communicate with ourselves. And so learn how to do video conferencing. And I one of the things I love most about working at Taylor is that a lot of the folks that are on my sales team, I've been working with the entire time I've been at Taylor. And so we sort of missed each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so there was the camaraderie aspect that was hard. And so we would have a Friday virtual get together, you know, and have a beverage and talk music and would hang in there longer than we'd anticipate. But we'd had regular meetings to catch up. So the sales team was in regular communication with each other so that we could stay somewhat grounded. And it was a matter of just keeping. I didn't go to the factory for 2 years, and I live in town.
That's wild.
Because I was just going to sully the place. You know, they didn't need me. If I wasn't needed physically in the building, then they didn't need to have an area cleaned for me. And we're very effective about how we kept departments away from other departments and managed production so that people were safe and healthy so that they could build guitars.
Yeah, right.
And the way in which we build guitars, if one department goes down, that's catastrophic to the whole.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like dominoes, right? And so, I mean, to answer the question, it was a lot of learning and we did a lot of extra curricular work to just do the job. And I associated it to like being in school, being back in school, because I had to learn again how to edit video and create video communications to my dealer network and as we all did. And I knew some about this kind of stuff. I didn't know much at all. Create a studio to get in there and edit. And that was, man, back then it was just do whatever we can to stay in touch really it was about communication and staying in touch with people and being present when you couldn't physically be there.
Here's another interesting question. What's the process look like for luthiers and people that work on these guitars to work for the company? Like what is that? Because at one point I think...
That's a good question.
Well, no, because I think at one point, if I remember correctly, me and you were having a conversation and I said something like, well, why don't you just hire more people? And it's not that easy.
No, there is a misconception, and I'll call it a misconception, that Taylor is just a bunch of computers and robots hammering away acoustic guitars. And there are a lot of technical advances that we have made, but it's people have to put everything together, right? And so the uniqueness of Taylor is that I've heard it said that our factory floor is not a very creative place, because you have a task, and for us to be able to recreate that guitar right over there, we can't have somebody going rogue or trying a new idea.
Sure.
It would screw everything up. And so the nature of our build is that somebody will come in and be trained, and it's my understanding that you will go through a series of tests so they can get a better understanding. Okay, you're better in this department, or you're better in that department, you're better with your hands, you're better, with your eyes. We need you to be looking for imperfections or something.
Yeah.
And so you come in and then you learn the process, but it is a process. It's not, while being classically trained as a luthier is never going to be a bad thing. In our situation, you have to be adaptable to the process of building a Taylor guitar, because for us to be able to make all of these guitars one after the other, you have to be part of the team. And there is a process that you need to be a part of that you will be trained to be able to do, but it takes some time. It takes getting used to understanding the machinery. There's tools that are doing a lot of the work, but we need you there to finish the work. A lot of the machinery that we have, laser cutters, CNC machines, think about the stress of running a bandsaw all day long. If you were cutting tops on a guitar, you're going to not be able to do as many, or not be as consistent. But if you have a laser cutter, then what we're trying to do is save the employee from wearing down.
Right.
And our buffing machines, yes, we call her Buffy, but there are machines that buff the guitars. You've stood in front of a buffing machine. Takes a lot of strength and attention, and in one quick slip, and whatever you're holding is disintegrated because it's going to fly across the room. And so,
absolutely.
So again, the physical stress that you would have to go through, and I'm saying this because, again, the manner in which we build guitars is unique. Not as unique now as it was, but it was quite unique. And there is this shadow of, Taylors are computers, right? And it's what it does take is some people really understanding the process appropriately. And there is certainly creativity in the design of the guitars. But once we get to the design of the guitars is where the creativity happens. And then once the design is done, the process of building the guitar is strictly regimented.
Something I never thought of before until this conversation was when I have to wonder, like, when the factory is looking for someone to hire to fill a specific role on the team, you also have to kind of look at the personality of the person and, hey, do we want to be a co-owner now with this person? Does this person fit into our culture? Are we going to get along with this? It's almost like on the last episode we talked about, tour bus etiquette and being on a tour bus together. It's kind of like that. Like it's kind of like, in a sense, that because you guys are, you're more than just employees, like you're owners together, and
That's a good point.
You're a bit of a family.
I think the person develops, and I think that's just a long tail. We're certainly going to look for the person that's available and able to do it. We're benefit from the fact that we are in San Diego, California, where there's a fairly large population of people, a pool of talent effectively to pull from. And so we do benefit from there being a good number of people. You know, we had a program, Bob Taylor started a program in which we were building guitars in high schools as opposed to, you know, he firmly believes in shop, and that's where he made his career, was based off of wood shop and metal shop. And so
that's really cool.
So we established the opportunity to build guitars in some of the high schools around San Diego. And I think in some of those situations, some of those kids came over to Taylor, you know, after it was done. One, because they got the bug for it, and two, maybe they had a talent for doing it. I'm not on the hiring aspect of it, but I do know that there is, you know, I've been at the company a long time. The nature of what I do is very different than what the folks in the production floor do. And so, yeah, you certainly want to have that camaraderie. I benefit from being in a department that has a tremendous amount of camaraderie.
Nice.
And you hope for that in all of the others, but at the end of the day, you also need to have people that are skilled to be able to do it, and we all try to get along as best as we can, you know.
Absolutely. One of the things that we do a lot of is we end up buying and selling guitars a ton, and a bunch of that is sort of vintage guitars, right? And that's kind of why I touched earlier on, you know, are any of the supply sort of becoming more scarce, is because, in what we do here at the retail level, you know, people are always looking at these vintage guitars as like, oh, the holy grails, you know. It's like, oh, wow, that's incredible. You know, and we have a few pieces that roll in here all the time, or once in a while, you know, these pieces will roll in and people are just freaking out. And obviously, you know, with Taylor, I just wasn't sure sort of how you see the vintage market, not just with Taylor, but I guess as a whole, even just your perspective on it. You know, prices keep going up on guitars, and I mean, you know, that's a good thing in some cases. You know, we've had a couple of people who've sold us a bunch of their guitars, and these people don't even play. And I'm like, well, this doesn't make sense to me. And they're like, well, no, there was a doctor or whatever, and they took their money and they invested in these guitars, and now they got 100 guitars. They're selling these guitars, and you know, now they're worth this much more. And so, how do you sort of see that? I guess it's a twofold sort of thing I'm looking to answer, is like the vintage side, like that sort of pricing going up, but just guitars even in general. Like, how do you see that sort of happening?
That's interesting, because now we are 50. We're starting to be a guitar that can be thought of, if you will, as vintage, you know.
Yeah.
And or we're just now, when I started with the company, we were that upstart kid still company, even 20 years ago, you know.
And you got yours, which is 30 years old.
And I got mine, which is, yeah, from the 80s. And I think musical instruments, especially nicely made musical instruments, are good at holding their value. To buy an instrument with the expectation that it's going to become a holy grail is kind of like buying a lottery ticket.
Sure.
You know, you can't buy something new.
Well, you got to maintain it too.
And you got to maintain it, and the market changes, and their electric guitars will be more popular than acoustic guitars, and maybe the industry isn't interested in buying old guitars right now, or maybe it really is. And so, as you know, there's always timing has a lot to do with it.
Ebbs and flows, yeah.
And so I think as long as it's if it still plays well, and that's the nice thing about old guitars and old instruments, is a lot of times they'll play great, even better than the day they were born. Acoustic guitars sound their worst the day they're born, right? Like, they're only theoretically going to sound better with time, as all these different woods that are forced into this shape become that shape and become that guitar, as opposed to being a tree, right?
Right.
And so a well-made instrument is going to at least maintain its value, generally speaking. And then you do have those certain things, but what those things are that makes it the holy grail, you know, everybody hopes, you know, everybody finds an old guitar in a basement, one of their first thoughts is, it's an old instrument, it's got to be worth a lot, you know?
Yeah, right.
And we all know that it's not necessarily the case. You're not going to take it to the Antiques Roadshow and, you know, and have them gush. And sometimes it does happen. And so I know a variety of people who buy instruments as a way of creating an investment portfolio.
Yep.
there are worse things to do. The stock market might build or might crash. Guitars might be of more value or less value, but it is something that does hold a degree of value. So there is something to be said for investing in nice quality instruments for the future. And
that's key. Nice quality instruments.
Nice quality instruments.
Not just any.
I'm not just talking about going to the local, department store and picking up.
Yeah, exactly.
Some guitar in a box. There should be a level of quality to it, and you never know the nuance of how much it's going to be. Okay, well, they only did this run of guitars for a short amount of time. Only time will tell, but at the very least, you'll probably get something similar to what you put into it for it.
Yeah.
And if you buy 20 of those things, which many people do, God bless them. That's why we're here today, 50 years later.
Yeah.
You have at least something for your family, or something for you if you decide that, okay, let's cash out.
Sure. Yeah, and it happens. We see it time and time again. Mm-hmm. And the guys who are really smart will start cashing out, while they're still, on happening in the world, because they're like, yeah, I know what this stuff is worth.
Yeah.
And my
passing it on to your family or spouse, doesn't. They might not, and so that's where opportunity happens for the next buyer, or somebody just gets taken advantage of. So yeah, there is some value. You can't take it with you. So,
and we watch out for that too. Like we had one customer that came in and they only wanted $5,000 for this guitar, and it was worth $35,000.
Yeah.
And we'll and as a practice here at Music City London Guitars, we'll never do that, ever. That's not in our culture. We are, honest as the day's gone. If it's a $35,000 guitar, we're going to tell you this is a $35,000
Sure.
guitar. Now, we're also going to say, okay, for us to sell this guitar, this is what we're going to offer you, and here's why, and this is what we're going to make. And we're pretty transparent about that.
Yeah, and I think that those are similar to how we come up. You guys are have a strong moral compass of what you want to do, and understand to stay in business, you want to have a good reputation. You want to just have a reputation,
Yeah, exactly.
And so those are the things that, unfortunately, not everybody is like that, but at the same time, a good number of people are out there to guide you,
And there's the receiving end of that too, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's this instrument that you want to sell. Well, someone else is going to have to buy that. Right. So like if we're paying top dollar or overpaying for this instrument, then, what's the experience that person's going to get? Ultimately, you have to want to pass these pieces on for them to live for
it's a
generations.
cost of doing business.
Right?
So if you're going to represent somebody and buy a guitar from somebody to then sell it again, you're a business. It's.
And I would say 99% of people get that.
Mm-hmm.
You do get the occasional person from my side of the fence. You do get the occasional person that's like, oh, but I can get X. It's like, okay, listen, no problem.
I wish you the best.
Go try and get it. And if you can't, come on back and see me. Mm-hmm. No problem. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And that's all good. And the interesting thing is that there's so many guitars in the world now, and they do really last, especially if you take care of them. I would say, most guitar manufacturers' competitor is their own product.
That can be something that you look at, right?
Yeah.
And especially in an industry where old is popular.
Yep.
And I mean, I like old guitars, I like new guitars. And so it is an interesting factor of well, what am I going to get? Am I going to buy this used guitar? Am I going to buy this new guitar? And I think, again, one of the benefits that we have is we're continually innovating aspects of our guitars that give people reason to buy new.
Absolutely.
Where it can be harder if you keep reprocessing what you're building. The older ones are going to be more popular because the new one is just a new one, right? And so one of the benefits that we have is that we'll go in and change the bracing on our guitars, or we'll go in and change nuances or materials or something of that nature to continue to make it appealing and give, again, customer a reason why they should get that new guitar as opposed to that vintage. Now, does it always happen? No, of course not. But that's business, right? That's the market. That's where you just have to play the game to be a part of it.
I still man, I still when people walk into the store and they take that Taylor off the wall and it's new and they play it, they're like, wow, man, this guitar is really nice. Like it's so there is something unique, I think, about some of the Taylor stuff for sure, if not all of it, I would say in its own, various price categories. Excuse me. But I would say there's something unique about the fact that seems to happen to me. I don't know why. Well, I do know why now from talking to you, but that seems to be happening more and more and more often than most, and I think that's really cool.
Well, I appreciate hearing that because that's our goal. We want to make a guitar that's fun to play. Because if you're having fun, then you're going to play more. If you play more, you're going to get better. If you get better, you're going to have more fun, and it becomes a cycle. And I have a lot of people will say, and I know you hear this too, well, I'm not good enough for that guitar. And I don't believe that. I've been lucky enough to own a Taylor since I was a kid, couldn't play. But you have a guitar that is nice and enjoyable to play, you'll play more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And instead of buying this, well, this is cost effective, this is the first thing off the rack, that's where there's not as many musicians in this world because it's like, that's where our Academy series comes from. Man, I had this guitar that I tried to learn on. It was awful. The action was this high. The strings were all rusty. That person probably didn't keep playing guitar. If they had an enjoyable guitar to play, probably still be a guitar player.
Yeah.
Excuse me. My throat's drying out. So yeah, but that's a part of what we're doing at Taylor is trying to give you something that's a pleasure to do.
Yeah, a pleasure.
You don't have to play guitar. You want to play guitar, so you should have fun doing it.
What's coming down the pipe for the future? Anything that you can talk about? Anything cool?
Well, I can actually. I'm excited. We are going to continue. We have some models for our 50th anniversary that are still forthcoming, which you guys are participating in. I can't speak about it right now. We actually have an acoustic guitar amp called the Circa 74.
Hey.
And it's a beautiful mahogany cabinet grill. It has this very old school modern look to it. 150 watt, full range, 10-inch speaker, 2-channel, sweet as honey sounding acoustic and vocal amp. It's called the Circa 74. This is a throwback to when we started.
Yeah.
It's not branded Taylor, so it can play in the sandbox with other kids. And,
interesting.
And not just our family. We're waiting on it's being sold in the U.S. right now. It's more about the proper certification for export.
Yep.
At this time, but I'm looking forward to seeing this in country before the end of the year.
Nice.
And I'm very excited about this product. And I tend to play electric guitar more than acoustic guitar in my private life, but this has gotten me playing plugging in my acoustic guitar and experimenting with that. So I can't speak to that because it is actually out there. What I will always say, and I can say to everybody here, the one thing that you can always count on with Taylor is we're going to do something new. Every day, we're going to change something. Our hang your hat on the fact and count on the fact that we're going to keep changing things around and continuing to grow as a brand. We have an electric guitar line that's a separate company that's available. It's not something I'm a part of, but Powers Electric are out there, and we'll start to grow over time. The amp is really something that I'm looking forward to right now, and these 50th anniversary guitars that we're working on, the 814 Builder's Edition with a Singer Redwood top, luscious. All of the guitars have been a lot of fun to play, and
sweet.
Yeah.
Well, dude, music is the universal language of the world. Thank you so much for continuing to bring it to all of us.
Well, you're doing it, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm just here,
Well,
you're doing the show. This is great. I appreciate you having me on here. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming on and driving up and taking some time away from the fam. And
yeah, that's what I do. It's cool.
It's awesome. All right, man. Everybody, thanks so much for watching. See you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thank you for watching Music City Live. If you liked this episode, like the video. And for more clips and episodes, subscribe to the channel. Feel free to join the conversation by commenting below and visit us at musiccityliveshow.com.